Live streaming now.
Okay. Okay, then we'll start tonight's S&I meeting. Welcome everybody. Hope you all had a good day, and we're on with the meeting. It looks like we are shy of our usual committee members, with only myself and Lauren in attendance. But apparently that still makes us quorum, so we are able to proceed. So the first item, well, just to let everybody know, just to keep it all square, that the meeting will be recorded. The meeting is being streamed live as well, so all the usual things. And obviously, I can't give you any health and safety tips apart from know where you are and act accordingly if anything happens. So let's proceed with item 1 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of September. Lauren, I don't think you're in attendance at the meeting, but are you happy that we accept those minutes?
Yeah. So like you say, sadly I wasn't there, but fully accept them. What's the meeting? Okay. So yeah. Okay,
so the minutes of the meeting are accepted and will be signed off in due course as and when that becomes possible. So if that's all right with everyone, we'll move on to item 2. Item 2 is apologies. Do we have any apologies? I haven't received any.
None received, no.
Or haven't received any since about 2 o'clock anyway, when I last checked. So I'll take it that I actually haven't, but we'll confirm back if any came through very, very late. Are there any member interests to declare, Lauren? I haven't got any.
Nope, I've not got any either.
So no interest to declare. So we move on to item 4 and our guest for tonight, which is Councillor David James, who's just going to give us hopefully an update on his portfolio position and which economic regeneration. So David, I'll hand it over to you, and I'm going to mute myself. If anyone wants to raise a question, if you could just wave your hand around, and I'll endeavour to pick that up. But it's probably better until we wait for the end, if that's okay with everyone. Off you go then, David.
Do you want me to share the screen now?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. What I intend to do this evening is a little bit different from how I've done it in previous years, in view of the fact that we are changing and moving over to the new unitary authority. So I do an overview of the environment in which we're operating, the projects which we've currently got in hand, and future projects too, and the progress to date. And any questions on details, people can ask me at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Catherine. If you could have the first slide. First of all, the existing policy and delivery framework within which we're operating. First of all, we're operating within the old Daventry Town Centre vision, which runs out next year, and which we're currently reviewing and hoping to get a new vision before we go into unitary. And I think it's reasonable to assume that we will do that. Secondly, we're working to the 2040 master plan. Now, some of you may not have heard of this particular document, and quite honestly, I'd forgotten much about it. It was adopted in July, I think, 2012, when I was only just elected to the authority. But it's a document that's well worth viewing, because it's a little bit futuristic, but it mentions in that document some of the things that we're very concerned about now, like reduction in carbon emissions, eco parks, that sort of thing. And it's very useful. And it's still operative today in certain respects. The planners will have regard to that. And we hope that it will be adopted by the new unitary authority when that comes into being. But it is an interesting document. Then there's the West Northants Core Strategy 2014, which is now getting very dated, and which I presume will be superseded once we go into unitary by the plans that they have. That's the core strategy element, but parts of it are still operative. Then there's the Economic Development Strategy 2018 to 2021, which is much more relevant. As is the Settlements and Countryside Plan, the local plan, which we adopted in 2019. Then there's the Capital Programme, which shows what we've got lined up and how much we've got to play with at the operative level. And the SIL programme, existing future receipts anticipated under that. And of course, the revenue budgets. Next slide, please. Thank you. The potential policy and delivery framework for West Northamptonshire Council. Now, this was put in because I was asked, I think by you, Chairman, to make mention of this in the presentation. First of all, as I've said before, we've got the framework of the Daventry Town Centre vision, which is currently being worked up, which will take us to 2035. And now, the contract for dealing with the second part of this vision, the analysing of replies and formulating the ideas that are put forward that are viable and acceptable. We anticipate that will be done over the winter by Troy Planning, who have received the contract to do that, and that we shall get that adopted by the council before we're disbanded. That is hopefully before April the 1st. Then there's the West Northampton Strategic Plan, which is being worked up at the same time, and which will go on for a little bit longer, but hopefully that will come into place sometime next year. The Northamptonshire Strategic Infrastructure Plan, which to a certain extent will influence that strategic plan in terms of these planned infrastructure, which is possible to deliver. And something that I don't know a lot about, which is the West Northants Economic Recovery Plan due to COVID-19. And that, of course, is an extremely important exercise. That will tell us just what we can do and the constraints that we will have to work in until this wretched virus departs the stage. The West Northamptonshire Economic Development Strategy, that again is a process in process. That will be a potential framework. The Settlements and Countryside Local Plan, which I've already mentioned, that will carry forward and will be operative for some time. So we needn't worry that what we've worked on for so many years and has now been adopted by us and come into being is going to go out of the window anytime soon. The capital programme and the SIL programme and revenue budgets, they will have to be decided by the new authority. We won't know until that actually comes about. Other policies and strategies related to other activities such as highways, climate change, housing, leisure, recreation, health and care, community safety, education, all have a socio-economic impact and impinge on any ideas that we may have in the sphere of landed property regeneration and so on. And particularly the policies of partner organisations. For example, SEMLEP, which has been extremely helpful to us over the years. SEMLEP were very active in providing grant funding for the Catesby Tunnel project and also the Knoll project and several others that we have completed in Daventry. So they're extremely important to us, as will be the Oxford-Cambridge ARC. That will determine what sort of infrastructure is likely to influence our infrastructure here in Northamptonshire, because we are bound to have some overflowing effect from the introduction of the ARC. And of course, economics, England's economic heartland, which stretches from beyond Peterborough way down to Swindon. All of these things will impinge on what we would like to do here in Northamptonshire. In other words, we're not going to be working in isolation, and especially not in preparation of our strategic infrastructure plan and West Northampton's strategic plan. And not to forget Big Brother, the ARC spatial framework, which of course is influenced by government, and that's the overrider over the whole thing. Next slide, please, Catherine. The regeneration and development projects which we've delivered or enabled, going back a few years now, of course, but we did implement the Abbey Retail Park and the reciting and rebuild and provision of a new building for the Working Men's Club. That was under the Old Town Centre Vision site 4A. The Icon building, which was known as Town Centre Vision Site 4G. The Education Quarter, the UTC building and the Hill School, they were known as Site 6. Both of those have been done and were included in that particular plan. Rainsbrook Crematorium, which often gets overlooked and is a superb facility. There's no question of that. Ironically, I understood the other day that when Rainsbrook Crematorium was first mooted, I think I was told there was something like about 1,400 or 1,500 objections to it. I don't think anyone that sees it today would object to the crematorium, which is a very, very much needed and a valuable facility. The new homes for rent at Middlemore, which produces an income which we benefit from in some way, and which we didn't sell off because of the public outcry at that time. That was completed under our plans. Monksmoor Primary School, which is a superb primary school in terms of its building and the site itself. Daventry District Council played a major role in securing that and getting the necessary funding for that. The Phoenix Sports Academy refurbishment and gym extension, all carried out in the recent years. The new commercial buildings, the Hambleside, Danelaw, the extension there, High Force building, and the Heartlands building, which is currently available to let, brand new building, once the remedial and snagging works are completed, hopefully at the expense of the contractor. The depot refurbishment and new waste transfer station, which was done very, very quickly. The library relocation and the Abbey refurbishment, I still marvel at the way the library relocated so quickly from the old grammar school, and the way in which the Abbey refurbishment was carried out to provide a modern building for the library and a much better experience for library users. And of course, another example of the speedy way in which we dealt with things is the health rehabilitation building, the Reach for Health building, the sports park there. It doesn't seem possible that it's little more than what, a year to 18 months since we agreed to that project, and now it's up and completed. And I believe it's now occupied. They're actually in occupation. For anyone that looks at it from the outside, it doesn't look a particularly big building. It's got a whacking great car park, but this building inside is huge. It's got a very, very large area for the gym itself. It really is a good building, and as I say, completed in record time, and very good parking facilities there. Now, the other innovation, of course, which SEMLEP played a role in, was the Catesby Aero Research Facility and the Innovation Centre there. That is done. That is progressing well. The first, I think it was a couple of 100 metres of roadway is laid in the tunnel there. The Innovation Centre is erected and roofed. Hopefully that will be totally completed within the next year or so and in full operation there. And that is a bit of a world beater if things go right for them. And then the Knoll. The Knoll defeated DDC for the best part of 20 years because of its site specifics. And although we've got plans out to develop the Knoll, and we've got planning permission in the past to develop the Knoll for various things, when it comes down to cracking the numbers, it has always defeated us. And the reason being because of its height, the fact that it was like a small mountain made it extremely expensive to deal with. And it would not have been dealt with now had it not been for SEMLEP putting up a substantial amount of the cost of the development to enable it to proceed. It will provide something like about 50,000 square feet of what we call smaller units. And that is the first development of smaller units in Daventry, which are very much needed. It's the first development for nearly 10 years. So the Knoll is really a triumph there. I think something like at the date that I attended last, 3 weeks ago there, some 30,000 lorries full of earth and spoil had been removed from that site. Now that's an awful lot of earth, and there's still a bit more to come off to provide the necessary plateau to carry on with the development. But again, that one hopefully will come to fruition within a year or so. The Middlemore Site 7, the care home and the senior living village, the Crown Care building at Middlemore. When this was first mooted, former councillor Chris Long and I met with Crown Care at Daventry Council offices, and that must have been about 3 or 4 years ago. And I didn't think that we would get anywhere with it at the time. I was a little bit dubious, but I'm very pleased to say that the care home part of it is now completed, and I believe is ready now to take on customers there. The senior living village will follow, presumably, when the main care home building is fully occupied. And hopefully that will lead on then to the possible development of the other care home facility that's anticipated for Welton Road, because it will be this, at the moment, it will be the same people involved there. And then the remaining residential development site at Middlemore, which Futures Housing took on to provide a mixed tenure residential development. Daventry Council, of course, has profited there through having the money for the site and so on paid in instalments. I think we've got one further instalment to come. The development is proceeding well, and some of the houses, I believe, are actually built now. So all of these things have been going on, as well as the ordinary bread and butter issues that we deal with, and some of the smaller issues, like I say, for example, Overston Hall, little things like that that are going on. As well as coming on to the next slide, Catherine, as well as these that are nearing completion or in the pipeline. There's the Mulberry Place Cinema, which has an anticipated opening date of 2021, but we think it's more realistic that it might be after that, perhaps the summer, because there was a 3-week delay due to COVID and another week delay due to some little problem we had relating with the contractors relating to the structural bearing capacity of the ceilings of the cinema there, and to enable it to take the anticipated tenants' equipment, and that has been resolved now. But there's also a little bit of a delay about the public realm there, the paving going out towards the high street there. That has set us back a little bit there. We believe that really is the fault of the contractor rather than ourselves, but we're keeping that under wraps. We have gone a little bit over budget there. I think the total figure anticipated now is something like 12.75 million, including the cost of providing for the fit out, which the prospective tenant will be doing. But that has been largely due to the COVID delay. But more about that perhaps later if you wish. And one of the pleasing things is Malton Leisure Centre, which of course 12 to 18 months ago, no idea this was going to happen, but it's now, it's ours, and it's going to be opening in March 2021. And it's the car park there is done, the inside being refurbished, and hopefully it continues as it is now. We are considerably below the anticipated budget on that one. So Malton will have a brand new leisure centre, swimming facility, and so on, which I think we can all say that Malton deserves in view of the amount of development that it has taken on board over recent years. So that it really is a plus to the district. The TCV will be adopted early 2021. Then another important thing, which is only in the, well, I say in the embryo stage at the moment, is the Daventry South East Gateway, which has been allocated as an employment site in the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan. The Gateway, South East Gateway, is where the landmark hotel is, and Dennett's garden centre and that area around there, and of course the car side. Now, we all know that most people in Daventry would love to see the end of that car site. They'd like to see it relocated elsewhere, because it is, I think it's reasonable to say that one of the most attractive entries to Daventry is, of course, London Road. I think a lot of people will agree. That's not the only one, but it is an important one. And there's nothing worse than coming into Daventry and seeing that awful car braking site on the left-hand side there. And particularly when it used to overspill out onto the grass verges there. A lot of complaints about that from Daventry residents over the years. If this goes ahead, a number of things might happen. I think it's in the public domain now because one or two parish councils are being consulted on it. Autogreen is proposing to relocate to a site at Crick. And there will be a facility there which will be in accordance with everything that everyone wishes as far as transferring to green transport and so on, dealing with the surplus things like batteries, that type of thing, extracting the lithium out of there, the valuable components, and they are extremely valuable. That sort of thing that they'll do there. That at the moment is being tested with our planners. There's a scoping, I think, on environmental matters. But if that comes to fruition, and if we can come up with proposals for the Southeast Gateway that are viable and acceptable, that will provide valuable employment on that particular site. And it's quite an extensive site. It will need experts, not only engineers, surveyors, valuers, architects, and so on, all the usual construction professionals to come up with the necessary on that. And will probably involve SEMLEP as well. Now, that is allocated for an employment site. So I'm not kite flying on that. I might be kite flying on the rest because it's going to depend upon the numbers which come up from various investigative appraisals and valuations. So looking forward to progress on that, looking very much forward. It won't be a development of high bay warehouses, I can tell you that, because our local plan would not permit that. The council wouldn't permit that. Then we have something a bit more down to earth, which is the Daventry to Braunston cycle track. We know the potential route of that track. It's a matter of now getting a planning application worked up so that we can get planning through, and at the same time to get that done, and then to get to work up figures for tenders rather for the contractors. If we could get all that done, say a planning application in January, and then it goes out to tender, we could get a commencement there in March 21. Who knows? It might be finished by the time we go into the unitary. But the money is in the budget for that. That will definitely be going ahead, and it is imminent. At the moment, of course, we have one member of staff in the business team who's been involved in a motorcycle accident. We wish him all the best for a speedy recovery, and we're short-staffed anyway, so it's put a little bit of a delay on things. Daventry to Long Buckley cycle track, that's still being worked on. I think that might come when we're in the unitary rather than before. Daventry TCV infrastructure enabling works, the necessary infrastructure to be provided. Real bread and butter issue, refurbishment of the new street toilets there. It's time for a refurb. We've got the potential new commercial unit at Heartlands Business Park when that is ready. Agents working to find a tenant on that. And then, I was talking about this one yesterday, a programme of commercial building refurbishments following in-depth condition survey, dilapidation works to former Exova units. These are a group of several units in High March, which belong to the council. Exova, I don't know whether they ever used them much, but certainly they vacated them. We have submitted a substantial dilapidation claim on these units, which we will expect Exova to settle in due course. So that's watch this space on that one. And of course, they will be liable under law for any rent until such works are carried out or such a settlement is reached and it is agreed that way. North of Northampton cycle tracks, I presume that these are in the Boughton area, just north of Northampton. And then the Daventry bus interchange, which was, of course, in the old vision there, that's still to be looked at. So we've got projects that are nearing completion, and we've got some that are already in the pipeline being lined up to carry forward and will go on beyond beyond our existence. Next page, please, Catherine. Now, these are the challenges, and I'm sure you appreciate these and aware of them. The town centre and high streets, the competition from destinations and online. Well, since we prepared the first TCV in 2004, we've seen a complete turnaround in the change from bricks and mortar stores to online retail. At the same time, we also had a financial crisis as well. And it does look as though online is certainly here to stay. It's a question of how much bricks and mortar is likely here to stay. Now, that is the perfect storm insofar as we still have one large site in the town, Site 5, Gasworks site and that, which we did have planning permission for development for retail, hotel, family pub, that type of thing, and household goods store, and we did have tenants. But at the moment, that one, of course, has been put on the back burner. And in many ways, it's probably done us a favour by doing so, because we can now look at this completely afresh, given the emerging situation. And online is definitely going to continue increasing. There's no doubt about that. Most of the major chain stores have cut back on bricks and mortar stores and are moving more and more online. Nevertheless, there are some businesses that do need to have bricks and mortar stores. These are like fast food restaurants, of course, hotels too, and so on. And some people still around who need a presence, notably supermarkets. So I wouldn't say that if, say, Site 5 came back on the agenda and it'll be under the unitary authority now, there's no doubt about that. I would not be a bit surprised if there's not some interest from certain quarters in taking a unit on that site or units on that site for various uses. We'll have to wait and see. So it's not a total dead loss by any means. But of course it is Daventry, and Daventry has got its topography, the sloping site, which makes it, it slopes away, it makes it extremely expensive to develop and to provide infrastructure. And some of the conditions, underground conditions themselves are not cheap to deal with. So any development that goes on that site there will probably have to have external funding like SEMLEP. The previous developers, Henry Boot, couldn't see it being financially viable, hence the reason they wanted being released from it. So that was a pointer that underlines that consideration to be taken into account when we come to dealing with that site. And whilst we're at it, we will get rid of that hut that's on that site. Hopefully, we might get that done before we move to unitary. One of the other parts of this perfect storm is Brexit. The Brexit uncertainty, the new arrangements, both for bringing goods in and taking goods out, but bringing goods in, for example, cladding for buildings like the cinema, which we're fortunate at the moment to have not experienced any delay in that. But one can think of blockages to supply chains until, until some agreement has been arranged regarding customs and probably better practice, but we shall have to wait and see. But it is an uncertainty. COVID-19, of course, we've had a little bit of excitement over the last week at the possibility of vaccines becoming available. But of course, to get that administered to a nation, even a small one like ours, relatively small one like ours, is quite a logistical exercise. And of course, COVID has left in its wake possibility of a recession, restrictions on movement, increased unemployment, lost productivity, lost value to the economy, gross value added, and there are vulnerable sectors. And of course, burgeoning government debt. Government debt at the moment is just over now, 2 trillion, getting dangerously high. At some stage, that'll have to be reined in. And you can only do so much with inflation without causing another problem. So, that might involve a number of different measures to rein in that debt. And that means not only the possibility of inflation, but the possibility of reductions in government expenditure. So, we have to keep an eye open for those sort of possibilities. And of course, tax increases. Skill shortages in key sectors such as construction. Very pleased to see that a number of colleges throughout the country are taking advantage of the government's proposals to train people, basic training in colleges for people who want to do courses in construction. And these courses are free because there is a shortage of construction workers, tradesmen, as I used to call them, or tradespersons, not to be sexist. There is a shortage of those properly trained, and it's all very well taking people who come in to the country who are a bit of a builder, as it were. But we do see on some construction sites the follies of poor workmanship. So we want good training for construction workers, and there should be plenty of work for construction workers over the intermediate term. Another thing which is causing a lot of uncertainty is changes to planning legislation. Now, of course, this is a very big topic. These sort of changes which might come about, like abolishing Section 106, tinkering with the SIL regime, putting developments where an algorithm says they should be instead of common sense. This type of thing is fraught, to say the least. And very pleased to say that Daventry District Council, along with many other councils, have put forward their completed consultation, and also a strongly worded letter from our council leader, to the relevant minister. Climate change is an ever-going threat, but it's also an opportunity as well, because as we take measures to deal with climate change, we will be creating, hopefully, green jobs too, and pursuing activities to reduce carbon emissions and influence deal with climate change by introducing things which will create jobs too. So there are opportunities there, but it's still a threat, because if you're talking about carbon reduction, some of the practices that we're used to, we're going to have to cease over a period of time, certainly up to 2030, which I believe is the target rate for net zero carbon emissions. Property prices increasing. This one is in here. We already know that house prices on any traditional measure are way out of sync anyway. And at some stage, inevitably, there must be some reaction to that. Any increase in properties, the level of residential property prices increasing, any increase there in the short term due to perhaps, stamp duty temporarily being suspended on certain transactions, which give a boost to the market. We should be wary of that, because it could push new properties out of the reach of the young in particular, but ordinary families in general. So property prices increasing is not a good thing. Not in my view, at any rate. That's a personal opinion. Residential property, that is. Health and social care, that's a challenge to us because we are an ageing population. We know that social care costs a lot of money and we need a lot of resources to put into it, and we're going to have to do that. And I would anticipate that in the new unitary authority, the greatest priority will probably be put on health and social care. Because that was one of the issues I think that was pointed out to us by, I think it was the Bournemouth in Dorset, Bournemouth Pool Christchurch, when someone came up and did a conference or something. They said, get that issue right from the start. And I'm sure the new unitary will put great emphasis on that. Rural issues, there are always plenty of rural issues which tend to go unnoticed, even though some of the things are good and some are not so good. Transport in particular, digital connectivity, local facilities in the rural areas, affordable housing and development pressures, they will continue to be an issue which we shall address as part of the unitary authority. On affordable housing, we've been pretty lucky to do very well in recent years because of the number of developments in the rural areas which have taken place. Connectivity, of course, we're told that broadband will be extended throughout the country. Well, let's hope they're right there. Local facilities, the village shops, of course, they're difficult they find difficulty in remaining profitable, many of them, but there are some which do survive, usually as a community activity. And development pressures on the rural areas don't help sometimes too. The security threat level, the threat from terrorism has been raised to severe. That is a worry to everyone in the country about that. And I don't need to go any further on that issue, but it's severe at this present time. Local government reorganisation, keeping the convoy moving whilst rebuilding it. I don't know how they've done it, but they have to get the structure of the new unitary authority set up and to provide so that we can move seamlessly towards from the district councils and the borough council to a new unitary authority while still carry on with the daytime job is extremely difficult. And I admire the people who have been involved in doing this. You know, I won't mention any names because there have been so many, but one in particular I do know has been very, very good and has my complete admiration, if not the admiration of all of us for doing this. Next slide, please, Catherine. What is that? Opportunities for recovery. Government support initiatives, there are plenty of those, as we shall see. West Northants Economic Recovery Plan, which we're working on. The West Northants Economic Development Strategy, which is future-proofing to be produced and deal with the towns and rural communities. Innovation in digital and technology. Even now I've got a mobile phone now. Skills development and retraining, that's going to be extremely important. A greener future, and a greener future whilst creating jobs at the same time. Business support, diverse small to medium enterprises. 90% of companies in West Northants employ 9 people or less. I would think that's probably mirrored in quite a number of parts of the country, that they're the people who provide the jobs. You could argue that they're the people who provide the wealth too, because the other 10% are usually large companies, many of them probably foreign owned or partially foreign owned or run by foreign people bodies. So it's that 90% And 90% of the companies in in West Northampton are small to medium enterprises, and they employ small numbers of people. So we have to make sure that we support them. Increased investment in health and care, that too can create jobs. Significant new employment opportunities. Now I gather, I mean, Gary Underhill might want to enlarge on this. At Durft, a lot is going on at Durft. This isn't already known about, and that will provide thousands of jobs in due course. Apex Park in Daventry, the Southeast Gateway, these are all new employment opportunities. Increased business investment and FDI, supply chain security, and increased onshoring of storage facilities, for example, storing things, which will be necessary. I gather that new, larger containers will be coming into the country in future years, providing perhaps an increased demand for greater storage facilities. I don't know. Increased partnership working. We have a very good relationship with Daventry Town Council. It wasn't always that good. When I first elected a council, there were one or two councillors who were a little bit hostile towards the town council. I'm pleased to say that during my existence, I've only ever had good relationship with DTC, and we transferred a number of assets to them quite seamlessly, without any hassle or bother at all. We have a good relationship with them. We want to keep it. Semlip, of course, has been very good to us, and we shall certainly maintain that. DWP, is that, Gary will perhaps interrupt me here, is that Department Work and Pensions?
Yes.
It is, right,
Yeah.
and that's because they have part of our premises at the moment.
And we work closely with them, yeah.
Oh yes, of course, yeah, the private sector. Implementing the Settlements and Countryside Local Plan, the TCV, investing in development, the infrastructure that's required to bring about the proposals there, and reorganisation, work streams for day one, safe and legal, future efficiencies and one-stop shop for customers, which the new authority will have. And I think, is there one more slide after this, or have we come to the end? One more.
A few more.
Few more. All right. Government support initiatives split into two categories. I'll quickly run through these. Funding-based initiatives aim to bolster cash flow and liquidity position in short to medium term, including debt-based funding linked to size. Government is providing that. Corporate financing facility for large companies, coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, future fund bounce back loans, and loan scheme for small companies. Many in Daventry benefited from that. Tax or grant-based initiatives which aim to alleviate cost pressures and preserve cash. A number of tax-based and other incentives made available to business, such as VAT deferrals, time to pay support, non-domestic rate reductions or holidays, job retention scheme, the furlough, additional support for specific sectors, cash grants for small businesses, which we've distributed through councils, and business interruption insurance. The quantum has been and remains significant. For example, the furlough, 9.6 million jobs by 1.2 million employers, costing 41.4 billion. That's an incredible amount of money that's been injected in to help people over this difficult time. And of course, I end up where I mentioned before, national debt is estimated at over 2 trillion, which is quite considerable, but I suppose not considerable at a time of national crisis. It's probably the highest government debt since the last war, I think, or the early 50s. Next slide. Is that it?
No.
Oh, here we go. There you can see there's a table showing how much we've paid out. You see Daventry has paid out, it were initially allocated 15,402,000, and we made 1,386 grants to local small, medium enterprises with a total value of 14,790,000. There were, of course, one or two claims which were denied, and one or two which were settled, after further investigations. But that's the total number of grants that we've paid out. Northampton, which is very much bigger than us, but was allocated 37,374,000, only had paid out 3,015, totaling 36,319,000. And South Northants, a bit more than us, 17,146,000 allocated, 1,631 recipients, of a total of 16.75 million. So it's more or less, I would have thought Northampton would have been bigger than that, but there you go. But that gives you an idea of the number of companies, businesses that have received grant payments as at the 1st of September 20. Total in our unitary area of 67, nearly 68 million there, which has been distributed. A lot of cash. Next one. And the furlough data, July 2020, 36,300 furlough employees in Northampton, a rate of 30% out of a total eligible population of 121,100. In Daventry, 13,200 furloughed employees, a take-up rate of 32 out of a eligible population of 41,400. That's Daventry district. And in South Northants, 14,600 furloughed employees, again, a take-up rate of 31% out of a total eligible population of 46,300. I suppose this is understandable. The highest proportion of workers still on partial or full furlough leave are arts, entertainment, and recreation, 41.4%. Accommodation and food, 29%. Administrative and support services, 16.8%. So those are the ones that come in the highest proportion there in those particular fields of endeavour. Western Northamptonshire is particularly exposed in a number of key sectors, including accommodation and food services, because the food industry is quite important in Northamptonshire as a whole. Accommodation, food services, arts and entertainment, wholesale and retail, construction, transport and manufacturing, all of which make up the vast majority of our West Northants economy here. So we are exposed to that. And as soon as we can get over this wretched COVID thing and get these people back into full operation and people back to work again, the better it'll be for everyone, and particularly in this county. The economic recovery plan, work is underway on that, obtaining socio-economic data and analysing it, establishing the baseline situation, employment, unemployment, furlough, job availability, gross value added, gross domestic product, business environment, impact on sectors, positive, negative, considering Brexit and other challenges, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, SWOT, identify priorities, survive, stabilise and grow. That's the sort of programme of it, direction of it. Identify measures which can assist in addressing priorities and general economy opportunities. Identify resources required to assist. This will certainly involve partners such as SEMLab. Produce and implement an action plan and follow up with West Northants Economic Development Strategy, future-proofing, to be produced and deal with both towns and the rural communities. So that work is ongoing. The CAFE work streams, C for capital projects, A for asset management, F for facilities management, and E for economic development. In the structure of the West Northamptonshire Council, the current potential organisation blueprint shows that these particular fields of endeavour will be located in the Place and Economy Directorate. And that will have a head and then an assistant head, and then breaking down as we go down the chain. The work streams are progressing to identify what is required to be safe and legal on day one. And that's the sort of maxim, safe and legal on day one, business as usual. Some service transformations may then follow. A programme of capital projects is being produced to inform budget setting and resource allocation. All of that work is underway. Next one.
That's it.
We made it.
Yep.
Not too bad. Not too bad. Are there any questions anyone would like to raise?
Thank you, David. Sorry, I can't see anyone, so I don't know, because I've still got the sharing screen on, so I don't know if anyone's waving their hand at the moment.
Right.
If you've got a question, can you just shout out, please? It appears there's no questions, David. But
no, sorry, I've been shouting out without noticing I've been on mute.
Okay, Ken, off you go.
Well, look, I firstly, apologies for only having joined David's presentation part of the way through. You'll understand some of us had quite a lot of difficulty finding a way of getting into this meeting. There's an issue that I'll raise as in any other business at the end. But I just feel we've had a long presentation. Much of it, I think that, David, if you had been able to actually simply send your slides beforehand, we might have been able then to actually focus on the things that we want to know more about. Because the objective surely of this committee is to question what is happening rather than simply receive long reports, particularly when they're all actually written in the screen in front of us. But there are one or two points that I wanted to raise from earlier on. Firstly, you referred to the town centre vision and hopes that it would be complete. Now, I can't remember what you said in the slide. Was it January or simply early in 2021?
Over the winter, Troy Planning will be analysing the responses to consultation and will be coordinating those and seeing which proposals are acceptable in terms of viability and acceptability and so on. And they will then start working that up and come back to us for us to decide.
I recall assurances about the extent of the consultation and the amount of not just consultation in terms of, ticking boxes on websites, but genuine deliberation, discussions that you would have with residents, with stakeholder groups, and so on. Is all that going to happen over the coming period with lockdown and everything else? There was a whole program of stages that were presented when we had a session with the company whose name escapes me at the moment, who seemed to be knowledgeable. Is all that going to happen?
Yes, it will.
It will. do we have a program that actually shows us how that is all going to be fitted in to the next few weeks, given that we've got lockdown at the moment, and we will have Christmas, the year in the middle of it all?
Yeah, they are working on the website as we speak with the next with the set of proposals from the findings report, and that will be out to consultation in December. So they're working on that at the moment.
What does out to consultation mean in this?
It's a similar public consultation as last time. So engagement with a virtual website, so that people can give their comments on that. And they're going to do a webinar as well, which explains the work that's been done and the vision. So there'll be a webinar that people can dial into. And ask questions, and stakeholder events as we did last time as well.
Sorry, Gary, but that just heightens my concerns here. You say, which will explain the vision. The vision should be something that emerges from what the residents want. Of course, moderated by the by the consultants and moderated by by council officers. But it strikes me that we're back into the same sort of consultation.
No, it's not. It's not that kind of thing. That it is very still open still. So this is what the first consultation revealed. These are the findings of it, and the findings report will be accessible to the public as well. And then there will be some suggestions made that people can comment on, and they can make their own suggestions again should they wish to do so.
Okay, well, sorry if I'm sounding sort of slightly concerned and indeed slightly skeptical about this, but I wonder if it's possible for there to be an outline of what is the plan from this stage over the coming months to ensure that there will be the opportunity for having a very full discussion, not of the vision, but the options that might be included in a vision.
That's what they are. Yeah. Perhaps I didn't make that clear, but yes, no, there are various options.
Well, it would be useful if members, and probably beyond this committee, were given an update, because the last thing we heard were the very positive plans that were presented at a special session. I can't remember when it was. Yeah. But clearly things. We all recognise the difficulties that that we're in.
There will be a similar session for members for the next stage.
Okay, but I think that members actually need to have something that not just to make members to make their own inputs into what we think should be within the vision. We will have voices in the same way as residents and other organisations. But we also need to have oversight of of what is the process, because as I've argued before, in things like this, the process is almost as important as the outcome, because the process will shape the outcome.
The material that will be used for the consultation will be going to council.
Oh, that's what I was just going to say, Gary. We were informed early this week that a report is going to council in December in order that we can get the full programme delivered as agreed with members before this council is disbanded. Yeah.
So the council will see the material before it is sent out to the public or made available to the public.
Okay. I don't want to sort of hog this, but I have another couple of questions.
Carry on, Ken.
My second one, and partly continuing this discussion. I recall, I can't remember whether it was a strategy group or a council meeting or what, but when we were actually assured that the future of Site 5 would be left until until we had a discussion through the vision discussion.
Yeah, that's correct.
What the future of Site 5 was going to be. And yet, David, you seem to talk about Site 5 as if Site 5, you were already talking about the retail possibilities and the fact that this is now likely to be handed. It won't be resolved before reorganization. And therefore, Site 5 is at the mercy of a new council. There is no, is there any guarantee that whatever is decided within the vision will be binding on the future of Site 5? There has been discussion before about Site 5 being not there for, for retail. I think that we probably agree that retail is not going to work, but not regarding it as simply being there for for commercial development or indeed for for extra housing. Even if there is a bit of that, there needs to be a much wider discussion about what is it that the residents feel that they want on Site 5. And from I may have misinterpreted you, David, but I just got the impression that that opening for saying that Site 5, now that it's not going to be a retail park, now there is the opportunity for sitting with the people of Daventry to actually find out what others think would be useful on Site 5. It is not just another bit of real estate. It is an opportunity for shaping the nature of the town. And that's why it's areas like that that I think are central to the concept of having a town vision.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's completely in the lap of the gods. But what will happen?
It's not in the lap of the gods. At the moment, it's in the lap of Daventry District Council.
Yeah, but we can't bind our successors. When the West Northants unitary takes over, it takes over all of the assets that belong to DDC. And it will be up to them to decide what happens to Site 5, bearing in mind any town centre vision statement that we've passed. Presume that they would take note of that. And our settlements and countryside local plan, and so on and so forth. But we can't gainsay what they will do because we don't know who these people will be yet, who will be elected on that authority, and we don't know the balance of the various parties on that authority or anything. So in that sense, it is in the lap of the gods. We shall have to wait and see what happens, but there's no way that we could bind their hand, tie their hand.
I appreciate that. But we can give a positive steer. Otherwise, there's no point in us even discussing it if we say that we cannot influence it. Yeah. And it's how we influence it and how we set up what it is that we are transferring to the new council over the next months. However, if I may, there's a thing which I was quite interested in that you said. You had a slide headed, opportunities for recovery. And at one point you talked about support for businesses. I'd be interested to know what sort of support the district council has been giving or will give to businesses. What is the nature of this? Of course, there's support that comes from the COVID funds from government, in which we are a sort of intermediary, passing it on to businesses. But what else are we actually doing? And this, you might like to think of this too. You mentioned the difficulties in the regeneration of the town centre, looking at it as a retail centre. The pressures that retailers large and small are up against with the change in the nature of retail and the amount of shopping that's now been done online. I see recently that Rugby Council is helping its small retailers in Rugby by offering them practical support and training in how they can actually take advantage of online marketing, online sales. Is Daventry doing anything like that? And if it is not, why not?
Yes, I think that's true. Gary,
Yeah, so we have already had an event for the retailers in town, which was organised by Google, which they were invited along to help them do online capability. So we've already done that some time ago. And indeed, we are looking at proposing as part of the vision that an online platform, sort of catalogue platform, if you like similar to Amazon, but for the retailers, is developed. So yes, that will be suggested as part of the vision.
I think I'm delighted to hear that. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we are very small in terms of resource, in terms of economic development, so it's very limited what we can do. We do rely heavily on our partners for providing the business support to businesses. So SEMLEP has a growth hub that has a lot of business support activity on it, including workshops, online events, etc. And we do the signposting to that for our businesses, and we put them in touch with them. And that's what we do. We also try and find premises for companies that are looking for premises to expand. That's within our capability, but we do rely heavily on our partners to support our economic business support activity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who's got any comments? I can't see everyone. As I said, I've actually only got visibility of 9. So, Councillor Frost, if you want to say something, I can see you waving.
Just dealing with Councillor Rich's first point. It seems almost too logical to be true. The notion that we could get that presentation in advance and then read it and then use the time in committee to have a dialogue, a sort of a question and answer session, if you will. That just seems so unbelievably logical. Is it legal? Are we allowed to work like that, or is it just a bad idea, or what's everyone else's view? Or is everyone happy with it?
You know, in previous, I mean, this must be the 3rd, possibly 4th one I've done with Scrutiny on this over the years, and each one has been different. You know, ranging. The first time I ever attended one of these with their portfolio holder then, which was Chris Over. He just read out a piece of paper and then answered questions on it. But I think it would have helped probably if it had circulated. I should have, you know, had it circulated earlier. But, you know, it's not always possible to do that with other pressures. And, you know, you have to sometimes do it on the hoof, stand on your feet and do it.
If I may, members, it's up to you to determine how you wish presentations by portfolio holders to be brought to your committee.
I was going to say that's a lesson learned, I think, today. To be honest, I didn't expect the report to be that extensive. You know, it covered a huge amount, including historic. And yes, probably in hindsight, I should have said to David to actually present that to us in advance. And we do have some meetings left going forward, and we'll ask the next portfolio holder to actually do that so we can have sight of it. And I think it's a point well made. But as Maria Taylor just said, that's down to me and us as a committee to have said to David to provide us with the presentation. But it does seem slightly obvious, but we are where we are now, and you know, I think that was an extremely comprehensive report covering the huge mountain of things that the district and the new authority is looking at in the country, and maybe just trying to disseminate the influence that the final knockings of Daventry District Council can do to influence that. And I think that's what we've got to try and get out of this. And you know, I think primarily, David, you've just given us, you've just sort of really shown us what a hell of a job that the new authority has got to do, not only in becoming itself, but actually in looking after all of those interests, employers, employees, economic and the well-being of everybody. And it's actually quite frightening for any new members going into that, and best wishes to anyone that does get elected onto that authority. But I think Councillor Ritchie and Foster made some good points there. So yeah. Does anyone else got anything else to say on this? Councillor Frost, please continue.
Just the other slight admin thing. At least 3 people in this meeting that you see before you didn't receive or don't think they got the link for tonight. If somebody could just spend some time into working out what's going on there, that is to say, if it's my or our mistake, then we need to learn from it and improve our admin skills.
Absolutely. And since there are issues, then we'll have officers look at that, because it does seem, we are quite a long way into Zoom meetings, so I don't know what went wrong there, but I'm sure the officers will look at that for us.
Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie?
Can I, Chair? It was the matter I said that I might raise as.
Yeah, shall we do it at the end and move on through the?
Okay, it's related to this.
So I'd say thank you to Councillor James and Gary Underhill for producing that report for us, and anyone that was listening, because as I said, it was comprehensive and did put everything into a great big melting pot of the considerable amount of work that is to be done. So thank you very much for that. I actually think it would be probably advantageous to actually distribute that to the whole of to all members, actually, just as a portfolio update. I think it's obviously they could have come along to this meeting, but to those that didn't, I think it's just a valuable tool and may even raise some questions and give you some possible answers going forward, David. So if we could probably suggest that would be good. Thank you. And please don't feel you've got to stay for the rest of the meeting. Obviously, you're perfectly welcome to do so. But if you need to go and eat your fish fingers or whatever, then please feel free to disappear.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, no,
okay. Is there any other questions? Because I can't see, as I said, I'm on an iPad, so I can't see everybody. No, it looks like we can carry on. So thank you very much, Councillor James, for your input there. So and best wishes. So we now move on to the next item then, which is item 5, and it's a report from the Community Safety Partnership, their annual report in essence. So I think that's over to Kevin Fagan for this one. And again, if we've got any questions, if we could note them and take them up with Kevin at the end, that would be good. Is that okay with everyone? And I'm just going to mute now and hand over to Kevin.
Thank you, Councillor. Obviously, as this has been circulated in advance, taking all due regard to the previous comments, I don't intend to go through it page by page. There isn't a substantial amount of difference from reports that have come to this committee in previous years, although I recognise that not all the members were serving on those previous occasions, so there may be questions on that, on some of those aspects. I think just 2 points in summary, which is that we are seeing a general decrease in crime. The major factor which is working against that decrease in crime, and this is across all crime types, but the only factor which is working against us in general is the increase in violent crime. And that hasn't gone down during lockdown. During the first 3 months, we didn't notice a decrease in crime. We noticed a decrease in crime type. So the sort of serious assault that was perhaps experienced in a nighttime economy disappeared, and this year we are actually seeing a reduction in more serious violence and violence with injury. The major increase we're seeing is in offences of stalking and harassment. And some members have contacted me individually to ask whether we got any further information about that. The only information I can give at present is that the various hypotheses that the usual hypothesis put forward is that it's regarding domestic violence, and the issues of stalking and harassment have been domestic in nature. Not so. Only about a third of our stalking and harassment offences are domestic in nature, and both the domestic offences and the non-domestic offences are going up by a similar percentage. What I've done is I've asked the performance improvement team at police headquarters whether anybody else has noted this rather serious increase and whether they've requested any products, and the answer was no. But I'm happy to say that the superintendent for neighbourhood policing also receives these reports, and comes back to me with comments. And he's requested a product from the performance improvement team. So might be that when we get to the next quarterly report, we'll actually have a lot more information on what's driving the rather large increase in stalking and harassment, which is undercutting any other reductions that we're seeing in things like burglary and vehicle crime and that thing. The other major issue, I think, from the report will be the question of the future. Obviously, there's a bit of a history lesson in there about why community safety partnerships formed and how we formed and the various aspects that the partnership unit have done over the years and how we currently function. But the major issue, I think, in everyone's mind is how is that going to work as we move towards the west. Interestingly, we only had a conversation this afternoon, myself, Northampton Borough and South Northants colleagues, regarding formalising that structure. There's a very strong agreement between all three of the current districts and boroughs that it will not work putting everything into trying to put everything into one Western formula. So trying to run the sort of groups that my officers run and the officers in Northampton Borough run, and trying to put them into one pot just won't work because the issues are so radically different. So I hope it's a reassurance to say to councillors that we're nowhere near doing anything like that. That's not the plan. The discussions we've had are very early stages, and of course, again, that will come down to the people who take over, whoever is the director and whoever's in the new community safety partnership board, which will be formed when the new unitary authority comes together. Statutorily, as soon as there's a sovereign authority, it will have its own community safety partnership. So while we might be joined at the hip with Northampton in terms of the legal status of the partnership, how it practically operates, we're very much thinking in terms of separating things out into the same sort of command structure that the police have split into. So the superintendent who covers the entire West would attend the board, for example, while we would have steering groups and action groups which would work at inspector level. And the inspectors, there's one covering Northampton and one covering Daventry district and South Northampton at the moment. And then having some problem-solving groups of vulnerable people, sort of safeguarding, multi-agency safeguarding issues, going down to more of the neighbourhood levels, which is where the sergeants run theirs. So that's the sort of structure that we were discussing this afternoon. That's very, very early days. We were waiting on something to perhaps come down from local government review, but now that we're nearly the end of November, we've decided to grab hold of the reins ourselves and start to put that structure together in anticipation. Then present it if the members of the two community safety partnerships are happy and police partners are happy, then we'll try and put that in place before the 1st of January, before the 1st of April, so that it's in process. Then any incoming structures might change over the course of the year, but I wouldn't think that anybody would be looking to do that as their first order of business if I was a new director or assistant director in the new authority. Those are the only two things I really want to say, and that may have preempted some of the questions that you had. But I'll be quiet and open myself to questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Kevin? Ken, please proceed.
Yes, can I mean, thanks for this report. You have at the bottom of page 17, you've got priorities for 2021.
Yeah.
The second of which is domestic abuse, and you refer to, domestic abuse and the extent to which, it's linked to at least some of the increased level of harassment and so on that that's being experienced. What happens if an issue like that is a priority? What can you actually do? If you want to prevent people from stealing cars, there are probably various things that you can do that make it more difficult to allow people to get away with a car theft or with a burglary. Domestic abuse comes into a slightly different category. And am I right in saying that there are some parts of the district, and indeed some parts of Daventry town, in which the level of domestic abuse is actually very much higher than many other parts of the county or indeed the country. And it has always worried me that, you know, if that is the case, there needs to be something, there needs to be some sociological explanation of why we have areas like that, and therefore of what we need to do to actually tackle it. I assume that there are all sorts of issues of, you know, of deprivation, of housing standards that all come into it. But is there anything that your group has actually done to commission that sort of study to find what it is that lies behind some of these high figures?
Yeah, there is. Actually, we've over this side of the county, we're sort of held up as a bit of a beacon for trying innovative things around domestic violence, especially. We adopted domestic abuse and domestic violence as a priority several years ago. And one of the things that was accepted by the Community Safety Board at the time is one of the things about statistics, isn't it? What does success look like? What is good? And we said that one of the things we will be looking at during our focus on tackling domestic abuse would be an increase in reporting. And we saw that. We saw that in a very marked manner. But once we started changing the attitudes of the agencies and making sure that people who reported incidents got a good service, we saw an increase in reporting, because people who previously might have suffered in silence or not reported to the police because they never got any result from doing so, did get a change in reception, and so therefore were more inclined to report the repeat incidents and tell their friends. So Northamptonshire Police in Daventry and South Northants got a marked increase in the numbers of reports. Now this is actually going back quite a few years, and we changed attitudes quite a lot across police. We changed structures both in Daventry, and that expanded out to the rest of the county. So, for instance, there used to be just one of the issues of one of the groups I mentioned in the report is the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference for High Risk Youth. That used to be a one county-wide meeting, and we formed a separate one for Daventry and South Northants, which said, why wait until things become high risk? Let's deal with the standard and medium risk. And everybody else thought that was a great idea and adopted it. So the central one was scrapped. We basically take all levels of risk now at the Daventry and South Northants one. To the extent that the Northampton one, unfortunately, has had to go to fortnightly because of the numbers they get. In terms of what the drivers are, for example, Abbey North Ward is one of the highest scorers for the incidents and the incidents per capita. And when we saw those figures, we consulted with both police and our health partners and our schools partners, because obviously we have some very healthy relationships across the board. And we're looking at a relatively small number of repeat customers, unfortunately, repeat victims, repeat perpetrators, and what we also term separately serial perpetrators and serial victims. The distinction being you've got the people who will report several assaults by the same partner on the same partner. So what they technically call it a dyad, a pair. But then you'll also have one of those partners going off into a new relationship and being an abuser again, and then going off with another new relationship and being an abuser again. And also the partner going into a new relationship and being a victim again. So you had repeats when it was the same dyad and serials where it was different partners. So the police started to track those much more assiduously. The other thing that happened was that in each local policing team, starting in Daventry and South Northants, officers were assigned to be specialist domestic abuse officers who would get to know all the victims. In Abbey North, for example, they could easily tell us exactly who those victims were. I just get raw numbers. They could actually put probable names to and then check those figures and come back to it. So you were often looking at people who were who had triple diagnoses with they had domestic abuse going on, but they also had drug addiction or alcohol addiction and or mental health issues. And that was marrying up with what the schools were seeing at their reception classes, which was a much higher number of children attending those schools with special support needs. 1 year at William Parker, the reception class was at 65% of reception class children had some sort of extra needs. So they needed additional staffing into those to get them up to where they should be at the end of reception year. And all credit to the school. They did a very good job in making sure that you couldn't tell the difference at the end of year one. But what we're still looking at doing is having a targeted preschool there so that we can get the siblings of those people, or the people who before they've even come into reception class, so they can get a targeted preschool and actually tackle those things earlier. And that will allow for some parenting support to go in the same with the troubled families and the early help for coordinating all of those children's services parts on there. One of the things that I always have to say about our stats, our data, is because our crime is relatively low, small things really stick out. And often one person can become what looks like a spike in the data, which wouldn't show up anywhere else. Or one night of you were talking about vehicle crime, one night of people stealing car wing mirrors in Brixworth might make everybody in Brixworth sit up and take notice, and actually shows up on my stats as a major blip. 22 car wing mirrors in one night, but I've got Sergeant Puckrin going out and pounding the streets of Brixworth now, so that we're looking at what happened on that side of things. So we're lucky in that what looks like a big spike is usually a relatively small number, and if we can direct the resources through health and through children's services, then we will get a downturn on that. And in terms of those repeat victims, we run away from the MARC, we run a domestic abuse conferencing system where we work with Women's Aid and Eve, and councils will know about the Comfort and Joy project and that sort of thing to offer the practical support. But we will work with those agencies to make sure that people know what the services are out there. Demographics is an interesting one. I could talk for a very long time about it, because you've got a lot of studies that say there are certain people who will shout early and shout often, and then in other demographic classes they won't shout at all until things reach an absolutely critical point. So that in ABCs you might only get someone when it's a very, very serious assault will be the first time they report to police, and then they will leave. Whereas in Ds and Es you will often get a very early report. There's a couple of longitudinal studies on that we've taken on board. But we're coordinating all of the partners and all of the data that we can. But I've asked for other products, especially on this stalking harassment thing, so we can drill down into that, because there's a lot there. I said I was going to be short, didn't I? I failed.
There's only one thing I would add to that, Kevin, which I think is crucial. It's been well established in Daventry District and has been expanded out to the whole of the county that every perpetrator and every victim gets a visit and a follow-up by a police officer. And every one of those perpetrators and victims, where there's a child in the house, gets the next day follow-up at the school and a follow-up to a health visitor and a midwife or whatever if somebody's pregnant. So we have absolutely tied it into the agencies, and that must be 5 or 6 years since that's been in place, and that's making a difference. And we're very low on the repeat offenders. As a rule, we get good level of reporting, but in terms of repeating, that's coming down.
I've forgotten about that, Marie. You're quite right. Again, that was something that we piloted with schools in Daventry, so that they were closing that circle of homeschool street. The school's obviously having a pastoral care for the children during the day, and they might have support networks already in place for little Johnny if something's gone wrong at home, because they'll be well aware of his home circumstances. But unless they're told, then they can't put that pastoral support in place until such time as he kicks off or reacts or goes crying into a corner. So yeah, we brokered this process whereby the school's Senko is told by 10 o'clock the next morning if police attended a child's house the night before. That's been copied throughout Northamptonshire now, I'm very, very happy to say. It's that early warning that means that those systems can be put in place, rather than one agency knowing one thing and another agency not knowing, when they can work more efficiently together. Thanks, Mayor, for the prompt.
Is that okay, Ken?
Yeah.
Kevin, that was, anyone else got any questions or points they wish to raise? No. Kevin, thank you very much. That was a really comprehensive report. It was sobering reading, of course, as usual, because it's the nature of the subject, isn't it? But yeah, just congratulations. I always think it always looks like you do a sterling job on this, and your attitude is always good, I think, and your relationships that you build up with people are of proved invaluable over the period, and let's hope that the system can go on and go forward into the new authority. And I think this committee would join me in saying let's hopefully get that right and pass through all of the good things that have been done in this district, and obviously learn from the other parts of the new authority as well, and take it forward just to make people's lives better. So thank you very much again for that. So take care.
I'm off my 3 fingers now.
Okay, and again, feel free to disappear if you so wish. Item 6, my rather brief annual report. I don't know, has everybody just had a quick look at it? Is everyone happy with that, or any other comments? I don't think I'll dwell on it. We'll just we'll take that as being passed on and put into the minutes if no one's got any comments. So if everyone's happy with that. And so we move swiftly on to item 7, which is the corporate strategic plan. Just the usual report on that one. Are you there, Maria?
So yeah, I've got it going. Thank you. Once you've opened this up, it's sometimes a bit difficult to unmute yourself. Okay, so I'll
primarily concentrate on the reds and ambers.
Yeah, I shall do. So first page, that looks we're okay on that one on green. I'm just moving this. Sorry.
I'll just interject. If members have got any questions, if they could just shout up, because with the screen sharing, I can't see you. So if you just shout out, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so it's looking fairly positive on at the end of Q2 reporting. On the first page there, so all green. Into the next page, another green. This time the economic development strategy has changed from amber to green, so that's another positive there. Another page of improvement on this one too. The positive national media coverage has we haven't seen much in Q2 there at all, so that one's gone from green to red. As you can understand, the focus has definitely been on national media has not been focusing on the kind of stories that we might be getting that sort of coverage. So that's turned red, and it looks likely that that will stay that way from what we discussed at our management meeting.
Maria, could I just on that? I know it's not critical to everyone's lives, but do we have I mean, I take it we are still like working to try and get it out, because you know, in these difficult times, sometimes it's actually quite nice to see one of those little stories about a good thing that's happened in your local neighbourhood, as opposed to continually just reading all the horror statistics that we seem to see every day on regarding COVID and its consequences.
Yeah, this is just a very narrow measure, Mark. The social media is very active, and the comms team are doing all sorts of stuff. I think this is a very narrow measure for what we're getting out there, and it's being picked up in national media, and we're just not having very much of that stuff picked up. But there's certainly lots going on, and lots of good positive coverage in social media and other local media. It's just we're not getting much picked up in national media currently.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you.
On to the next page. So electric vehicle charging points, that position has improved considerably in the second quarter. We've turned that to amber now. If things carry on as they are, it's looking likely that will be green by the end of the year. In the meantime, our original charging point has actually come to the end of its life. So even with that going on, we've got the number of charges is pretty high for the second quarter. We're in the process of getting the first charging point replaced, but we've still got a high level of usage, and council officers are using the undercover ones to make sure that there's maximum availability for the public to use the ones on the open air car park. But we've put some media information out on that one actually, just to make sure there's good awareness. Again, this one's just green. No data on that one, and just green. This is the Green Flag Award, which is technically at the end of September was no data, but you will have seen if you've been watching that we have achieved the green flag. So that, but that will technically not be reported till the next quarter. So Daventry Country Park has achieved its green flag. The planning brief for Overston Hall is red. Looks like it's likely to remain red for the time being, although the supplementary planning document is underway. Conservation area reviews, that's all green on that one. Sorry, my computer's making strange noises. Self-serve, again, that's well up. That's pretty positive. We have got good coverage on the phones and everything, so that isn't because people aren't able to contact us by other methods. We've got really good call answering rates and all that sort of thing, and good customer satisfaction, but we've also seen a big upturn in the number of people self-serving across the board. Sport and physical activity, understandably, given the lockdowns this year, has suffered somewhat because we're measuring the usages that we're facilitating on council facilities. Supporting elderly and vulnerable, there's been absolutely loads of support provided to elderly and vulnerable people, but we're actually measuring what's delivered. And given the reluctance of some people to allow during the initial shutdown, some people were reluctant to allow people into their own homes, particularly with them being vulnerable. So there was a bit of a delay with some of those. We've certainly got a very full caseload, lots of work's underway. We're anticipating spending the full amount allocated for this year, but there's a possibility that some of that will go into next year. So it's you can see the activity in the second quarter is significantly increased, but it's still looking red on there at the moment. The housing intervention work is carried on. Clearly environmental health are busy in a whole range of things, but we would still prioritise housing interventions where required, and we've got houses and multiple occupations and private sector housing issues that they're given the same priority as we normally would, because they obviously they're public health issues. That one's green now, so I'll just flip to the next page. So voluntary sector services commissioned, I think we covered this well last time. It's taken a huge dive because a lot of the actual usages are what's delivered by DACT, and they completely didn't deliver any services at all for I think an entire quarter, and only a small proportion of their services have picked back up again. They're certainly not up to full speed. That said, a whole range of different services in the voluntary sector have definitely picked up and are doing absolutely fantastic things. We've now got 10 good neighbour schemes across Daventry district and thousands of volunteer hours, ensuring that lots of vulnerable people are given lots of help and support all over the district. So whilst the actual measures we've got traditionally are showing a reduction, in practice, we know that there's a great deal going on all over the district. Parishes, councillors will be aware of all of the different things, formal and informal, that are going on to ensure people are getting all the support they need. These are quite difficult, the volunteer activities that we can facilitate. We usually provide grant funds, community events and that sort of thing. These are quite difficult to do. We were looking at ways to facilitate some, but of course, with the limit on social gathering, that's likely to remain red now this year because of COVID. Council tax collection, you can see, is amber again this quarter. It's looking likely that that's going to continue this year. Likewise, non-domestic rates collection is now red for the reasons given.
So we do feel that's pretty much COVID orientated, do we?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Commercial rents is only very slightly underneath the target for Q2 there, but just being cautious, that's on amber. It's steady, it could be worse, but it is just under the Q2 collection target. Commercial floor space is looking good. So that, you know, that sort of does look quite positive, taking those two figures together. Sorry, this one's bigger. Medium-term financial plan. The reserves are fine. Oh, sorry, this one just needs to be shrunk a bit. Not that much, sorry. So health and safety, that percentage is climbing up, and I know that we're expecting the number to be back up by the end of the next quarter. This, just to make sure members are clear on this is not that there's a terrible problem with health and safety. This is about audit recommendations being done in time and reporting back to managers. So the managers reporting back to us when we're collating the figures. On this page. Nothing on this page. The corporate plan, which achieved, is now at steady as Q1. It's at 72% against a target of 80%.
Thank you, Maria. Any points to be made on that to members? Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Ritchie, you're muted.
Sorry, it's just getting back to the the issues of voluntary activity, which you were showing us was red in some places or or low. It as you said, it doesn't actually reflect what is actually happening in terms of the number of people who are involved in helping in a volunteer capacity, whether it's through parish councils or even within some some parishes. There are groups that are doing it that aren't even properly constituted as groups. But
yeah, the thing, just to be really clear, these targets are, some of these are probably 9 years old, because these are the groups that we commission. So we're measuring them against their performance, and that's why they're in the corporate strategic plan. So the fact that new volunteer organisations have sprung up since we set those targets and renewed them, we're mentioning them in the commentary, but we can't capture, wouldn't be right to capture them in the other targets, which are there to measure how we're investing in these strategic community and voluntary partners, and this is a way of demonstrating that they are delivering what we're investing in. So unfortunately, some of those, for good reason, aren't able to. I mean, in the same way as the sports can't deliver the usages, community transport can't deliver the usages at the moment because of the pandemic. But it's very clear to us that there's loads and loads of voluntary stuff going on.
So what we're saying is, we're not. It's crazy to go and you can't put new things to old targets, can you? It's the issue of targets. I do think it's quite interesting though that obviously it does reflect on the targets, and I think maybe there should be a mechanism to just sort of, as an addendum to those, just to tell everyone that there is a lot of, and we all know there's a lot of voluntary activity going on out there, and loads and loads of people signed up to COVID assist and everything else, and there's been anecdotally a massive, big uptake in volunteering. So it would be sort of nice for everyone to maybe that should be part of the comms, and I know it sort of is, but let's make a big deal of it. Anyone else? Any comments? No. Thank you, Maria, for passing all that info on to us. So we move on. We move on to the rolling work programme and the task panel work. So part 8, which is assignment 32, which is Councillor Harrington Carter providing an update. I assume this is a verbal update because we haven't seen a written one. So if you'd like to proceed, Lauren, and we're ready, willing and able to listen.
Yep, thank you. I'll make it relatively short and sweet. Like you said, I haven't finished my physical recommendation sheet because it is the most confusing paperwork I've ever done in my life. I've done as much as I can do, and whoever made this form hates everyone, I've decided. I've done as much as I can do. I've asked a couple of other councils who currently do, obviously the youth council, their opinion on a few of the questions that's asked in it. And then I'm going to arrange a meeting with someone. Don't know who that someone is yet. I need to ask people for advice on who's the best person to talk to about the recommendation form and helping me get it filled out. I realise our next meeting is obviously the 19th of January. The aim is to hopefully get it out and circulated well before then. Obviously, I've filled in as much as I think is right. It might not be right. But hoping to get a helping hand with the rest of the form and get it circulated out as soon as possible. My apologies completely for not getting it circulated for this meeting. It's my first recommendation form and it baffled me. So my 100% complete apologies for that, everyone. It's just a horrible form.
Okay, I mean you're happy that you're progressing with progress, and you are coming up with the recommendations, yeah?
Oh yeah. So the form.
I mean, I would suggest to you that you in essence write it up as a report and distribute it to myself and the officers as well, because there may be issues in there that may need to be discussed before they go through as final recommendations. There may be certain points on that. So even if the form is confusing, try and put the content together in a semblance of any sort of report, so it can be understood, and then we can get it presented to the committee for further comment. But if you do that, because senior officers do need to give their little bit of scrutiny and advice on it as well, because I know as a committee it's up to us to say what is what, but sometimes there may be practical implications that you need to be aware of which may affect some of your recommendations or processes. So it's important that people get sight of that as early as possible in order that you can tweak your words, and feel free to use the whole committee in any early doors comments on that. We've seen tonight, had a long report from Councillor James, and the earlier everyone sees what you're thinking, the better it may be. If you get any feedback on that at all, it can only be good for your report. So I recommend that you do that, and hopefully the other members of the committee are quite happy just to scan over it and put forward some initial responses in order that you might take that on board to save end this out as a discussion in the meeting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That sounds wonderful to me.
If that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, I hope fellow members are happy with that as well. They're averting their gaze from the screen and not wanting to commit to it, but I'm sure that's not true. So, Lauren, yeah, it would be good to have something on that to present. We do need to get on with these things. So if you could really endeavour to get something out as quickly as possible, because of course January comes round very fast. Even in the world of COVID, I'm sure there's still going to be Christmas, and I'm sure there's going to be New Year. So just remember, lots and lots of things stop during that time. So that needs to be done sooner rather than later. So,
yeah, that's fine. Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So moving on then. We were going to go to Councillor Robertson to finish. Well, I haven't seen Councillor Robertson's report. I will be speaking to him and asking him just to get that sorted. So we'll move on to assignment 35, which is Councillor Ritchie. Have you got any update on protecting the work of DDC going forward into unitary?
I circulated an email to you all about a couple of weeks ago, in which I actually questioned, whether there was still a project here, given the state that we're in, given the time that is left for Daventry District to actually do things. I don't have a copy of my email in front of me, but some of the issues that led me to thinking about this as a possible area for asking what the council is doing, have come up earlier. The idea that Daventry, as a council, has got a project to work with residents, to work with the town council in producing a vision for Daventry. But that vision for Daventry will probably just be signed off at the same moment as Daventry District Council is disappearing. And are there sufficient safeguards in place to ensure that it remains a document of some force? As Councillor James made it clear, yeah, of course, we're in a position where a newly elected council cannot be bound and can take its own decisions. I'm not sure that's entirely true in every case, but I give that as one example. But then it struck me too that most of the discussion about how you tackle these issues is the sort of discussion that is taking place not within the district council, but is taking place within some of the groups of the new shadow authority. That are, particularly those that are looking at the constitutional arrangements about what structure we have to recognise localism and and issues like that. But it just struck me that we might have been embarking on an exercise that by the time we had anything meaningful to say, it would already have been discussed in our other more powerful forum than ourselves, and we would be making recommendations to a body that actually didn't have any life left to implement them. So I don't know. That argument about our coming demise, I suppose, refers to any recommendations that we're making on anything from this committee. But I don't know. I am perfectly happy. My motive in saying that, look, I'm not sure that this is actually going to be particularly valuable. It was not from my view that, God, this is going to be a bit of work for me that I prefer not to do. It was, does this actually mean anything? So I don't know if others have views on this.
Councillor Ritchie, I do have a view on it. I think you have been fairly vociferous in the Daventry District Council and at the West Northants in the sort of continuation and the ongoing aspect of helping people in their everyday lives. And I understand what you're saying about is this group just toothless and going forward as a piece of paper goes into the abyss of the West Northamptonshire Authority. But my view on it would be, as a committee, that even if it's just a sort of a general thought process document that basically says, the good things that Daventry District Council have been doing should be continued, and etc., etc. Is still, it would make me feel better as a district councillor that we had actually put that into the melting pot of the new authority. You know, to be able to say that, you know, as elected members, we did think about it and we did look at it. We may not have the full authority to ensure that those thought processes do go through, but we have made our successors, whoever they may be, aware of our thought processes. And if we don't do it, then, you know, no one is going to do it. And then that just leaves it open, and history will say that there was a small black hole in what we did as a district council in saying goodbye to our people in that guise. That would be my view. Councillor Frost, have you got any comments on that? No. So,
okay. Shall I have a further think about this?
Yeah,
and
if you would, Ken, I think if you put forward, I mean, I think you're sort of right. I think it's more of a, for me, I'd expect more of a, like an overview type thing covering across the board. It's like, you know, David James gave us the hour-long talk, which covered absolutely everything that could have probably thought about an economic regeneration, of which probably only a small percentage is actually within the district council's power to achieve. But that small percentage is still going to be important, isn't it? And you know, and I think, you know, for instance, your comments on Site 5. You know, I'm not totally convinced that that this council can't put forward its proposals on Site 5 based on the public's perception, based on the public's ideas of what they want. And I think that's, for instance, for me, especially as a town ward member, is quite important that does go into the new authority as quite vociferously, if you understand what I'm saying. And that's the sort of thing that I was thinking that we were going to be looking at.
I will try. I assume that on something of this nature, and given the circumstances, if I sketch something that I can circulate to you, yeah. I can circulate to the committee, but at the same time, you know, there's no point actually waiting to start working on anything until the next meeting of the committee, because by that stage we're really up against approaching the deadline. Yeah. I
mean, I know there's a format for doing these things, but as a committee we can do what we like. And if it's just a memorandum that gets put forward to strategy group to take forward to the West Northamptonshire, then so be it. You know, format. Maria may look horrified at what I'm saying, but you know, we can put forward what we like as a committee. So you know, let's not be hamstrung by that sort of thing, particularly as we move towards the end of the council, where timeframes become a completely different thing, don't they? You know, you have got a hard stop end date instead of a movable feast. So you know, let's do what we can on this group to make sure that we get.
I'll attempt in the next few weeks put something together and circulate it.
That's great, thank you. Okay. So, Councillor Frost, it's over to you on your DDC's response to COVID-19. Now, that sounds like a big task as well, sir.
Yeah, I think that's true. Thank you. I would say, well, admittedly, I haven't got much to compare things with, but I would. It feels like it's moving at an almost giddy pace. When my colleagues. Councillor Ritchie and Harris are meeting at least twice every week, and we've had a very productive meetings with Ian Vincent and also Edward Cook today. We are set to meet with Maria, Audra, and Tony on. I'm frantically looking at my diary here. I think it's the 24th of November. Anyway, yeah, so we've got a lot still to do. We want to send out, we want to canvass the views of parish councils, as many residents as we possibly can, and particularly businesses. The meeting with senior officers will be to discuss that amongst other things and how we go about that. If anything, I'm concerned about how we're going to get it all done before the. I mean, basically, I see sort of the February main council meeting is sort of absolute sort of deadline. Is that fair? That's a fair comment, isn't it? Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, it's a slightly sort of dazzling amount of work to be done in a very short amount of time, which is why we're pressing on with meetings as as quickly as we possibly can. But it's already proving interesting. It's a very hot topic that seems to change and evolve every day, and we'll do the best we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say again, Councillor Frost, it's like we have got this hard stop end of council deadline. So yeah, it's let's do all we can to get something out. I mean, I'd say I won't just say shoddy work is any good, but if we can, yeah, I mean, try and sort of shortcut where possible without losing integrity, then that would be great, and that's all understood. And it may be, maybe we have to take a decision, for instance, on, I mean, canvassing and getting responses from out and about in the wider world is very, very difficult. Maybe short brief sample surveys to get a flavour of that, more than a definitive, might be the way to go in the circumstances. Whereas normally I understand that you want to give the absolute all of the nuts and bolts all screwed in together and everything tied down. But in the circumstances, I think even if we get a generalised feel based on some information, it's better than doing nothing based on 100% information.
I do agree. Yeah, otherwise there's a danger, I suppose, of reaching for the skies and ending up sort of falling,
Yeah, exactly.
So I do agree with you.
And as long as we have to, as long as you put provisos in your report, based on sort of saying that you have reservations about maybe about some of the work that could have been done that wasn't, but you feel it's there or thereabouts, at least the thrust of where we are. I think that's. I think everyone will understand that. So we have got the hard stop, and we do need to get everything in. It's getting close to D-Day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone okay on that then? So we move on. So implementation activity, provide an update on progress of recommendations. So yeah, this is back to the reports, isn't it? Have you got those, Maria?
Yes, Chairman, I've got this report in front of me. It actually says community manager, but technically, as of March, this would have changed over to Tony as executive director resources, but it's all green anyway. So in the interest of just continuity, I've left it as it is. But that one is, this assignment 20 is actually fully delivered, all green.
Okay. So we're happy with that?
Sorry, I do apologise. There's an amber one for the business team that's due for next summer. Sorry, I do apologise. That's the only. That's
sorry,
the
only, which one now?
That's pending, and that's because the guide for parish and town councils and website content, and that's going to be. They're going to be producing a document within West Northants, which makes sense actually.
Okay.
So rather than refresh the current guide for parish and town councils, which is still fairly current, it's a relatively up-to-date document. They'll be doing something like that across the West.
Okay. But that's all in hand, yeah?
Yeah.
According to that proviso. So
assignment 26.
yeah.
Parking in the Daventry estates. Yeah. Yeah, so this one is waiting. The only one that's amber on that one is the formal research on minimum parking requirements for any new house buildings, and that's awaiting the supplementary planning document, which again is due next summer, and that's an action for the local strategy manager. I mean, the West Northants planning team will be doing that. That is, you know, it's on their work programme. It's just not going to happen while this council is in existence, but it is. They work in very long time scales in planning policy. It won't be going anywhere. It's on their programme.
But it is in the programme to take forward.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the antisocial behaviour.
Well, can I just on parking on that particular point? I mean, look, I accept it overall on this assignment. The things might as well all be green because the district council has done what it is going to do. It's not as if the district council is going to do more, even if some of us feel it should have done a lot more. On the formal research, my slight concern is that this arose from consideration. There are, from what I can remember, our chair will correct me if I got this wrong, but there are actually national guidelines on the amount of parking that should be provided in different, in different densities of housing and so on. I can't remember how it's phrased, but the argument is that actually in a place like Daventry, whether we're talking about, town or villages, circumstances are different from what they might be in a much bigger metropolitan area where you have much more public transport. Clearly even a suburb of Northampton is in a different position from a suburb in London where you might have an underground station at the end of the road. But it is still
there aren't national parking standards now, Ken. There were a few years ago. No, there aren't any. That's why Northamptonshire County Council.
Well, my argument is that what I think we need to be looking for are things that are actually, what are the local recommendations, and not just one. Given that we are in an area where we don't have, we have bus services around Daventry, but in many places, people are going to be much more reliant on cars than they might be in other parts of the country.
I think it's like the county council does have minimum parking recommendations, doesn't it, which haven't been adopted by the district council, and that's where this came from, because we felt that Daventry District Council should be able to impose minimum parking standards on any new developments going forward. Yet that was the thing, and for me, part of that process is everywhere is different, and having a generalised parking requirement isn't possible. But what you would hope was built into it would be, for instance, if somewhere didn't have any bus service, then the parking requirement would be greater than a place that did have a bus service. If you see what I mean, and that's what you would hope would come out of those sort of discussions.
Can I make a second sort of observation on this report? Number one, the idea of a leaflet came from the task panel, having studied the problems in parts of Daventry town, particularly places like the Headlands, where you don't have off-street parking, where you have buses that need to negotiate around parked cars and so on, where indeed the very idea of a task panel arose from a meeting on the Timken estate. And yet nothing has been done in leafleting in the Headlands or the Timken estate. Now, I did contact I think it was Kevin Fagan's group that had put together the leaflet that was used in Woodford. I asked earlier this year if I could have a copy of the text, because if DTC wasn't going to put one together for Timken, then I would. Well, the text that I was sent was the Word file that I had composed and sent to them, which was very flattering. However, with lockdown and everything else, nothing has actually happened. Clearly, time now is totally running out on us. But looking to the future, I would have thought that this is something that that we should have done, but we didn't do, and it looks as if we've decided not to do. I would have scored this as being red, but I accept that it is green in that we want to move on.
Thank you, Ken.
If I can just plug once more, if there are issues with parking anywhere in the district, that is exactly what the road jag is for, and all of the partners get together to solve issues like that. Highways, police, parish councils, the district council. We have finite resources, but where there are problems, we will work with communities to resolve them. And that is still happening. This is, the very things you talk about have been resolved all over the district. Sometimes the fire service have led those, sometimes the police have led those, sometimes the parish council have led them, sometimes doing a bit of a survey and leafleting has been all it's required to resolve a problem. Sometimes people are need reminding periodically. Sometimes a community speed watch combined with something else can resolve things. So I would just plug that reporting issues, encouraging people to report issues, getting together and working out what the issues are can be a long way to go. But it's often how we can help communities help themselves, because our resources are finite, and especially now we have to prioritize the highest, the most vital clinical areas of work, and sometimes parking is not that high on the priority list. But we will have if it causes lots of neighbourhood tensions, of course we want to work with people to improve their communities and their neighbourhoods.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria, for that. And I'd say, Ken, again, if I'm not saying the parking issue has gone away in those areas, but just keep pestering Kevin Fagan as well, because part of his brief is to take that up with the powers that be, and to understand the severity of the problem, especially in terms of emergency service aspects, because quite often that is the drivers of it. So, but thank you for your point on that one. So we move on to assignment 29, Maria. We've got an orange there.
Yeah, well, we're in November now. This council adopted the climate emergency plan in February. I am the champion. I'm proud to be so, despite having an absolutely crazy year with pandemic and all sorts of work that we never thought we'd be doing in all sorts of different ways. This has very much been on the agenda, and I'm very pleased to see that each time this report is presented to this committee and to various other meetings, that the RAG status is showing improvements. I'll just highlight quickly the ones that have the red.
Sorry, Maria, did we miss out 29?
Did we? Oh, sorry, I thought we just done that one. I haven't got that in here.
Antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, sorry, I've jumped one. Sorry, yeah, antisocial behaviour. Sorry, I do apologise. I'll just turn that one over. So, yeah, so the first one has been, it's been basically that work has been delayed because of COVID. So that is amber, and they're expecting that to be picked up by the antisocial behaviour and hate group, which Laura Jones chairs, but that's going to be some time before that's picked up. And
okay.
Actions 2 and 3 have been delivered.
Does that form part of Kevin Fagan's brief as well on the antisocial?
Yes, yeah.
So, which was mentioned in the report, of course, wasn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, the priority has been, I mean, there's been a lot of the COVID response across the police and environmental health has been about working with businesses and people. You can imagine you've got more people are at home, they're either working at home or they're furloughed. We've had a massive increase in reports to environmental health, neighbour tensions and that sort of thing. So we're dealing with this on the ground anyway, and our approach has had to be, please be a bit more tolerant because everyone's under pressure and that sort of thing. So we're doing things a bit differently this year anyway. So we haven't had the opportunity to take a step back and encourage more people to report antisocial behaviour when the nature of it's been different because more people are at home. So some of the antisocial behaviour that you would normally experience hasn't happened, but different things have. So this will be picked up, I think, when it's more of a normal year. And it's definitely on the agenda of the county-wide group.
Thank you.
Sorry about that oversight. Back to
Okay,
climate.
now you can do environment.
Yeah, so as your climate change champion, happy to see that lots of progress has been made despite the very many challenges that 2020 has brought to us all. So I'll just highlight the red text where we've made some progress since the last report. So onto page 2, the Borough Council's drafting a carbon reduction strategy going to January Council with our input, and the idea being that we'll seek to propose that it then becomes the West Northants policy document, and because all 3 councils have been involved, that's a good basis for that. So that's a good example of everybody working from home but collaboratively. So that's really good progress, and it's exactly what we wanted to happen, to be honest. Our Jolie has been working wonders on the 20 points and some more too. On page 3, item 3.4, that links to that as well. So this is again, this is formulating policies and plans for the new unitary to adopt. So yeah, it's absolutely not been forgotten. And now with the blueprints being published this week, we've got an idea, we know where it's going to sit within the unitary, and we've got an opportunity as senior managers to comment on that as well. So that's, well, I won't be missing an opportunity to say that.
Okay.
On to the next page, 3.7. The 3 councils have secured a 2-year renewable energy contract for gas and electricity, and we're exploring if the West Northants could prompt an investment in local renewable energy generation. So that one's changed to amber. 3.8, that also links to the carbon reduction strategy mentioned before. Nothing on the next page. On the following page, 3.14, that also links to the strategy. So that's about setting challenging emissions targets. Nothing on the next page. I think there's a couple of pages now before the next one. Number 9, COVID-19 has taken attention off the work exploring commercial projects that might be viable under the Smart Export Guarantee, which was introduced in 2020. And surprisingly, hardly anyone's picked up on this for the very same reason, because the very people that would be picking up on it have been terribly busy on COVID stuff. But it will be very important, and I'm sure we'll be picking it up as soon as we can. But right now that one is red, so that's the update on that one. On number 11, which I think is 2 pages on, that's measures to offset carbon emissions are not strictly infrastructure within the sense of the section 216 of the Planning Act, but specific actions funded by SIL may have the effect of sequestering carbon, which would be welcome. But it's not considered to be lawful to add that description to the SIL infrastructure list. So that one's been dealt with, that's been explored. So at least that's one action that's been, properly explored.
Maria, can I just ask on that though, whether, not strictly infrastructure. I'm not quite sure why they wouldn't be strictly infrastructure if they are infrastructure. I know that sounds a bit of a truism, but is that just in legal terms are we talking there? Because okay. It's slightly frustrating, really. You'd have thought infrastructure was infrastructure, wouldn't you?
I think what you might be able to do is do projects that happen to be carbon offset as well, but you couldn't have a category that is carbon emission infrastructure offsets unless they're actually physical capital projects in themselves.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Make sure I haven't missed one. 11. So the next one is number 15. Farmers Market was actually hosted by the Town Council in September along the High Street. So it wasn't the usual. That was going to be a much bigger event. It was toned down somewhat because of the social distancing restrictions, but it nevertheless went ahead, and there were lots of local suppliers and green stuff going on. So, and I know the Town Council's keen to do events like that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say
with partners.
I mean, I'd say there is another farmers market planned for the early Christmas event, I believe.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that's not necessarily a green market.
No.
I mean, there's no restrictions on what the stores are there. It's purely, I mean, basically anyone. It's called a farmers market, but anyone can turn up with produce and actually do. It is aimed at. I'm not saying it's not aimed at local producers, because it is, but and primarily on the restrictions. I think the last one was primarily local producers, but whether that's a green market is another question.
Yeah, and it's on amber. It's still very much on the action plan. Jolie's maternity cover starts soon, and we'll make sure he's on that, because don't forget, Daventry market anyway, Tuesdays and Fridays, is run by the Town Council, and it's free to have a market stall. So it's very much in our gift to, you know, to tap into the normal business of the market to be doing this stuff. So it's not gone away.
Councillor Ritchie wants to say something.
I don't want to divert us into an argument that we've had and some of us have lost. But those of you who read the articles in the environment recently in The Guardian will have noticed that the experts in climate change and indeed in health have been pushing for having extra taxes on meat and dairy product, and making them think, you know, to hell with where it is produced. It is still doing damage to the environment, and a change needs to be made. So I grateful to Mark for actually, for raising the issue. But I think that this needs to have a thrust that goes with it. There are a few other points and other issues that I was sort of stirring up to.
Okay, carry on then.
Yeah, but this was about having the agreed action was about having a market with a sustainability focus. So that local craftspeople are more regularly featuring on the market. If you come into Daventry on a Tuesday and a Friday, even on a really cold or wet day, and actually COVID-19 has been good for the market, because as soon as they were allowed to reopen, it's actually become more popular than it was for years. So it's actually given it a bit of a second life, because the one thing you can feel safe is outside buying your fruit and veg or what have you. So there's something to be had there, I think. But I take your point, totally take your point. Number 17, this was about cost and feasibility of the best ways to sustainably reduce net carbon emissions from the council. So we don't plan to engage consultants ahead of Unity as yet, but actions will need to be considered as part of the WNC asset management strategy. So that's, and we know, as soon as those people, there is a team in place for that, and Jodie and her replacement will be making sure they're engaged with that. Well, that's being put together. Number 18, working with partner councils and exploring the best way of achieving a nil net carbon waste operation as part of the Waste Northants programme. So it's been raised with the Future Northants programme with a request from DDC that the programme, and in due course, Waste Northants works towards a nil net carbon waste service. So we've done that. We also raised with the Shadow West Northamptonshire Council and Daventry North to consider alternatives to petrol. It's been raised at both of those, and also at Daventry North, so we've done that. Number 20, sorry, that's already been done a while ago, but a new one we've added to the bottom of the list this time, 25. So we had some, from every cloud there's a silver lining, so The Warm Homes Fund underspend, we'd set aside quite a bit of money for that, and the government's pulled the plug on that, and we hadn't spent as much as we'd set aside from the Second Homes Fund that we've been holding for some time. So straight away we got that, put a report together and got that agreed, and that's currently being promoted now. So community and voluntary organisations, parish councils, community groups, they can put in for a climate change community grant to empower them to take action. So we're pushing that one really hard and hoping that, you know, it's very wide ranging. It could be used for a whole range of different activities. And, you know, sometimes village halls, for example, might have had reduced usage and whatnot, but there's, you know, they may have improvement programs that they could take advantage and, you know, put towards a different heating system or all sorts for this. So we're excited to have delivered that one in very short order as soon as we found out that we got some budget available. So that's the end of the presentation on that one.
Councillor Ritchie, please ask the question.
There are one or two lines in which I just wanted to ask about or comment on. I mean, I think that the benefit is that, you know, I recognise that the last half year has been, you know, unusual times with everything else going on and all the constraints. I do, however, I think that some of the things that have happened have been really, really good. I think that the change in the being switched to renewable energy is absolutely tremendous. I was delighted to see the press release going out about environmental grants for community organisations and so on. I'm grateful to those who changed their mind from a particular amendment that was moved at a council meeting, but, you know, nevertheless, we've got there, and I think that that is actually wonderful. There are references here to the climate action section in the DDC website, which I think is very, very good. My slight concern is the number of people that will actually visit it and that will actually see it. But as information and as a resource, I think that is actually, you know, really good. You know, having said that, there are of course things that I'm, you know, slightly concerned. I'd made a great list, but I will not go through them because if necessary, I can take them up directly with Maria. But yeah, you know, things where I see there are quite a number of things that were given as a timescale of December 2020. I suspect on the grounds that, you know, one has got to prioritise, and there was no point in putting everything was going to be done by, you know, May 2020. But it raises questions about, you know, how fast we can actually move to do it, and whether indeed, given that we are so close to next April, whether these are things that we can sensibly do as DDC or even start to do. I mean, there are something, discussion with schools, I would have thought that was, you know, that's a thing that, you know, needed to have started. We've got all the information with the website and everything else to actually do that effectively. I would have liked some of the leafleting going out to be sort of slightly more, have a greater sense of urgency about what we actually do. But these are talking about the way that we actually do it. If I find time, I will write a separate note of what my thoughts are on some of these things. But I'm grateful for the things that have been done, even if slightly anxious about things that have not been done. I'm quite sure if Extinction Rebellion had a seat in this committee, they would be having quite different things to say.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie, for your comments on that. So, are you saying you'll be writing to?
I'll try to just put further questions. And,
yeah, and I mean, I was just going to say to you, I mean, I think again a case in point, Councillor Ritchie, where, you know, this is part of the pass-on features of Daventry District Council to the new Unitary Authority, which is of course integral within the integral within the reporting process here, but probably part of what we should be saying for that to go forward to West Northants, isn't it? If you'd agree with that. So, okay. Sorry, I've lost the agenda at the moment. Bear with me.
Yeah, you talk about communicating with schools just while Councillor Wesley is finding the agenda. This time of year, we usually do our young citizens with, I think, 5 or 6 years running, and that would have been the absolute perfect time to tap into schools and incorporate that, because that's all about, you know, everything in there, road safety, cyber safety, and all sorts. And we could have done, you know, a big push on this, but we can't do that event. There's a whole series of remote, you know, Zoom events or whatever, but it's not the same. So we've been trying to work out the best way of doing communication. We're having to rethink a lot of things this year. You know, we're doing things in a completely different way because the world is a bit of a different place. But yeah, any constructive comments any councillors have got on any of this stuff, be more than happy to receive it.
Thank you, Maria. So I found the agenda again now, electronically, of course. So we're on the 1 year post-implementation activity reviews. Assignment 17, the review of the empty commercial property. This was found a little bit wanting last time, which was reported back. So recommendations 1 and 2 of the action plan be reconsidered by officers and the portfolio holder. I think if you look at the papers, that's actually being looked at. Unless anyone's got any further comments on it, I'm willing to say that that is actioned. Do we need to say anything on that, Maria? Do we need to do anything? No. And likewise for assignment 21, can DDC do more to support the case of homelessness in the district? Again, that's been updated in the report papers, and I'm happy that that has actually been fulfilled as well, unless members of the committee have any other views on that. So yeah, I'm happy that. So it looks like we are happy that that post implementation has been looked at and accepted, Maria, on those. And then we move on to suggestions for new task panels. My suggestion as chair on this is that we don't actually have any new task panels. I think there's more than enough to be going on with at the moment, and it would be, unless there's anything that's going to be very, very swift, fast, and done immediately, that we don't do another one. So does everyone agree with that?
The only issue I might suggest, Daventry District Council has been used as the guinea pig for the new computer system. It hasn't exactly been smooth. Perhaps it's not a job for the Scrutiny Committee, but as a sort of warning, as a guide note to what should happen elsewhere, I don't know if we have time to put something together.
By the time you've done that, Councillor Ritchie, the show will be over. I think 4 councils have gone through it now. There's a couple in quick succession. I think I've got to the bottom of where the emails got to as well. The invitation that was sent out with the Zoom was sent on Monday, and it was sent to the Scrutiny Council Scrutiny group. So it may be that it's in your inbox under a group rather than straight into your inbox. But what we'll do to overcome that is, this is just one of the quirks that we're working our way through. So nothing's broken, we're just not used to it in the same way as we would be. But there's a way we can make that easier by expanding a group before we send something out. So we're learning lessons on it every day. But yeah, it would have, I think by the time you've pulled a group together to look at the Outlook, it would be too late. But also there's so much functionality that's going to be achieved by us all being on the one platform, that even if we could have done it better or we've lost some functionality or whatever else, it's outside of our control anyway. So
Councillor Ritchie?
kind of what was going to be my brief item of other business. I can remember being at two separate meetings, one a DDC one and the other a West Northants one, at which protocols for Zoom meetings were discussed. And at both of them, I made a strong recommendation that we follow the practice of many other organizations that are having a Zoom meeting, of having a contact telephone that is there if anybody has got difficulty getting into the meeting. Or you have one. Well, in that case, Catherine, all we need to do is actually know what your mobile number is. Otherwise, most staff, we meet after hours, and of course the office lines, are shut. Members, if they're doing as they're told, they've probably switched off their telephones when they're in meetings, and it can leave those who are outside feeling totally helpless and isolated. So just a suggestion that if there is,
can I just say that we have circulated to members this telephone number and for you to contact if there is a problem.
My apologies.
I'll circulate the number again to you so that you've got
thanks very much indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and apologies to members as well, because as Councillor Richard just said, I'd actually switched my phone off in preparation for the meeting half an hour before, and I did actually notice it flash and got back to Lauren, but and didn't see anything from anybody else. So apologies for that. And obviously, I was completely unaware that that people hadn't seen the invite for the Zoom meeting, because I'd actually got it. But that may have been as a consequence that particularly Catherine's been helping me out on getting comms into there, because I'm actually speaking to you from Croatia today. So it's been a little bit of a journey. So thanks to Catherine for sorting me out and doing practice Zoom meetings to make sure everything worked from this end. So hey, it's we hopefully got that, and well done for actually getting in the end anyway. So thank you for that. Other agenda items then, suggestions. So I'm suggesting no new task panels, and I think Councillor Richard, you made your point there, and I think it was answered by Maria Taylor. So hopefully that satisfies your concern. And we see. Corporate governance, follow-up audit of homelessness has been passed on and actually actioned, and we also need to decide whether we want a portfolio holder attendance at the next meeting. Has anyone got any suggestions, or are we going to leave it and not have a portfolio holder?
If we think a little bit ahead, the next meeting is in January.
Correct.
The meeting following that would be in March, and there's almost a question as to whether it's worth it, given if we're talking about scrutiny. So there's a sense in which this is the last purposeful meeting.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you. I'm tempted to leave it in abeyance.
Well, I was going to suggest that perhaps we invite Richard Erger.
Okay. Do other members agree? Are you thinking just on a closing down review and where DDC is handing over and tying up all the loose ends? Is that the thrust of what you're thinking?
I think it needs an overview.
Okay.
There's no point in sort of discussing program areas, because the programs are either coming to an end or are being passed over to new management.
Well, I'll write to Councillor Auger on that basis, and also mention to him, if he is going to put it in the form of a presentation report, that he circulates it to us beforehand.
If I might be bold enough to make a suggestion, if you want to make an impression on the West Northamptonshire council as it forms, why don't you invite the leader of that council as well, or instead?
It's quite a nice idea. What do members think of that suggestion?
I think that's an amazing idea. I think as well, if that is an option, obviously I don't know if that is in fact an option, but I think as well it could mean that if Councillor Auger can't answer one of our questions, then
can I suggest we invite the two leaders as a joint process to actually answer questions and make sure that they know what each of the other one is talking about, which would seem
and perhaps pose a question, because it's not so much a portfolio as a, I don't know, how are you, if your question is how are the interests of Daventry District going to be with respect, I don't know what your question is, but that's been on your agenda, that's been on those thoughts, that's been a common theme tonight, hasn't it? So how does Daventry District feature in West Northamptonshire? Maybe you can.
A member's happy that I come up with something along those lines and invite the two leaders, and if we get one, we get one, and if we get two, we get two. If that's okay.
If you get two, I suggest that we also make sure that there's a fairly strong invitation to all members to attend, or members of the council. Committee.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much for that. So that's what we'll do on that one. So if that could be noted. I don't think there's any urgent business that I'm aware of. So that brings the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your efforts, everybody. Much appreciated. Sorry we had some issues at the start. Thank you again, Catherine, for your efforts with me, and thank you, Maria, for looking after us as well during tonight.
Can I please apologise now for disappearing? I'm all set up, perfectly working, and my computer ran out because it's not